I was going to come here today and talk to you about growing cities, like the whole idea that biotech will one day really be completely integrated into the fabric of our cities. But really, I think that's looking a little too far out, especially now that we've kind of taken it down a notch and just moved it local. So, one thing that is absolutely happening is that our cities are growing. I lived in New York for the last couple of years. The density is just getting amazing. It's one of the mega cities in the world. There's many more. This is actually how our cities are growing on the periphery. Billions of people, have been moving into really these completely bottom-up type of households around the world. These are the new cities. And of course, the architectures that it takes to support cities in the world are incredible. I'm Canadian, I'm Albertan. This is the oil sands in Alberta where a lot of our energy use comes from. It is absolutely a remarkable piece of engineering and a little scary too. In 2001, I went to China and watched this particular unit getting built, the Three Gorges Dam. One of the largest engineering projects on the planet. It's actually clean, it's profitable, but again, this is the type of architecture it takes now to support our population and our cities that are growing globally. In the next 16 years, we're going to add another billion people to the planet, and that's a conservative estimate. It may be less. We're actually really not that good when it comes to making stuff, though. We're really beginners. The Industrial Revolution wasn't that long ago, and of course we've had multiple revolutions since. Now we're in the information revolution. But really, Earth has been around for over 4 billion years, with an ecosystem that's been growing on it. This is actually the most sophisticated manufacturing plant on the planet. In fact, in the known universe today. And it's just a cartoon of a eukaryotic cell. We're made of cells. Every living thing is made of cells. And if you actually know the organization of a cell, it's really like a city. There is a central government that we call the nucleus. There are power plants called mitochondria. There are transport systems. There's waste management systems. This is really a little cellular ecosystem, a city architecture that in many ways we try and model to create our own sustainable systems. We started to map out some of the circuits in living cells now. This is kind of like a basic circuit diagram. They're programmable. It's absolutely cool. And they network together in ways that are becoming really familiar to anyone living in the digital world. The architectures of a cell of all living things is actually surprisingly similar to the architectures we've been creating for electronic information processors. I tend to think of my body as an internet of 38 trillion little living computers kind of working synergistically together. But really it goes deeper than that into everything. I'm actually a genetic engineer. This is how I look at the world. This is truly digital life. The funny thing is you can use this one programming language for doing just about anything with living systems. This is actually one of the most powerful machines in my world. It is essentially a 3D printer for the DNA molecule. Most people don't even know it exists, but you can write genetic code on a computer and print it with a machine like this and actually write programs that will run in biology, which allows you to do some really cool stuff. Why would you do biological engineering, though? It's because it's the absolute best form of manufacturing. It's all natural. It's all biochemistry, the same stuff we're made of. It's made of non-toxic materials. It starts with very raw materials. I mean elemental, carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, and it's infinitely recyclable. If you are seriously thinking about sustainable technologies, it's life. It's the only thing that's proven sustainable. So again, I work with Autodesk. It's a software company. I got the job because not because I know any of the traditional products that they work with. Essentially, they make tools that help people design cities or movies because we can simulate virtually anything in software these days. We help people put up buildings and manufacture stuff. But we've also learned in the last few years that we have to start moving out of the virtual world and really connecting more to the real world. This is our PR9 facility just over by the new Exploratorium, the Science Center. And it's a real substantial shift for the company because this is the first time we've kind of moved away from just working with electronic bits into actually physically working with atoms. And it's a full-on maker shop. Now we have the whole end-to-end experience of designing on computer, but also manufacturing on computer. And it's really changing the culture of the company. Yes, we have all the, the digital printers, but we also have a full machine shop. But the piece of software that really works for me was a little software program that's available for your iPad, and it's called Creature Creator. And it's mainly for kids to go and play around with little creatures, and when they're finished designing them and manipulating them, they can print it up on a 3D printer. It's really cool. But I want the real Creature Creator. I want to make living things as easily as I might design. So about 2 years ago, they founded the Bio-Nano Programmable Matter Group. Again, biology we have some idea about. Nano, it's really a scale of engineering. But the programmable matter stuff, that's kind of inherent to all life. Life self-assembles, and that's kind of the fun part about it. So we started making these tools. I won't go into them, but they basically allow for visualization and simulation and doing some deep engineering on some of these unfamiliar systems. We're working really bottom up with simple stuff. But the cool thing is, we actually have an output device now. That little printer that actually prints DNA, well, it's available to just about anyone through companies like this one. They act as like the shapeways of DNA. Print your design, they'll send you the DNA. This allows us to start programming bottom up, kind of living things. And for the last decade, we've been doing that with a real engineering mindset, not the biological mindset where you take things apart, dissect, but actually construct. So we've actually created kind of a branch to the tree of life called Synthetica. And most of it is really model organisms and single-celled organisms, but it's pretty cool. And a few weeks ago, I was speaking in this very facility at another conference called Solid, because O'Reilly, kind of one of the big names in computer science, had started a journal called Biocoder. And Biocoder is kind of neat because this is really the first time that programming and the programming ideas are coming into life science. And these guys, really state, we're at the start of another revolution, an information technology revolution, but really one that's based on genetic information. Most of my work these days is just programming the simplest biologicals, viruses. These are really just the biological equivalent of software programs. I want to go and make cancer-fighting viruses, but building out the digital pipeline for that. But we can already see where some of these things go. 4 years ago, this scientist booted up the first synthetic cell, able to actually make the whole program for a simple bacterium. Doesn't do anything fancy, still made the cover of Science and got global press, but it really doesn't have much application in our everyday world. More recently, this scientist, working with an international team of volunteers, was able to make the first chromosome of a little compound, or a little organism we call baker's yeast. And we should all be familiar with baker's yeast if you've ever made a loaf of bread, or perhaps beer. Beer is, I think, going to be one of the major distribution channels for a lot of the stuff that we engineer into the future. I mean medicines, new foodstuffs, vitamins, etc. And in fact, the technology for making beer, which you can do at home or in giant facilities bigger than this, is really going to start revolutionizing the way we make a lot of different compounds that move into mass production. But once you've got cells, you don't really have to worry about the development of multicellularity, because there's another track that's moving very quickly already in the digital world, and that's the printing of cells. It is bioprinting. And the way it's being used is in applications like making synthetic livers for pharmaceutical testing. That's kind of neat. But down the road, eventually people think they're going to be able to make whole organs. I don't know. Once you've got all the cell types, once you've got the printers, it can come together. There's really nothing stopping the progression of that path in the short term. It'll still take a while. The technology is getting so cheap, though, that people are already applying it to things like making synthetic leathers. And that's really important if you want to start reducing the number of cows you have on the planet, which is, consume a tremendous amount of our natural resources. But you can also use these organisms for doing more traditional manufacturing. This is Ginger Krieg Dosier, and she, a number of years ago, found a way to actually make sandstone bricks using a biological process that doesn't require any firing. You should, if you felt one of these bricks, they're surprisingly dense, but they're actually polymerized sand with a microbial matrix that's been secreted around the sand particles. And of course, some people think that one day down the road, we're actually going to be able to put cellular machines together that will actually make cyborgs and all these other equipment. I have no idea. All I know is you can really start thinking about manufacturing, about sustainability in completely new ways when you can program more than just industrial processes. And the learning is bidirectional. It's not that we're just learning how to manipulate biology. Biology is teaching us how to manipulate our own systems. The semiconductor industry is actually really important in this because they're already working at the nanoscale, 11 nanometers on the latest generation of chips. Below 5 nanometers, about the only systems that can manipulate molecules in a reliable and robust way are actually living systems. So in maybe 10 or 15 years, we might actually have chips that are grown using very similar technologies as the systems in us. Of course, we can also take really amazing technologies like the nanoscale fibers on a gecko's foot that allow it to stick to virtually any surface and move that into other material science. That is already happening. And one of my favorite things is just generative design, where you essentially take the evolutionary process out of reality and move it into the computer space where you can generate millions or billions of designs and have each one evaluated for the various constraints in the system. Okay, in the real world, it's what's the energy, what's the waste, it's what are the predators. In the real world, it's more like things like weight and cost and time to manufacture, but it's the same rules. So the cities of the future, I believe, are really going to start being made with some of these tools. You get these visions of green cities where you might have a green roof, etc. But I really believe that the sustainable processes and materials of life get integrated more and more into the design, construction, maintenance, and support of our cities moving forward. Because that's what cities are all about. It's about people. And if we don't learn how to integrate with the rest of nature rather than pave it over and put boxes up, we're in trouble. But this is the big opportunity of working with biotechnology. The future is less manufactured and more grown. With that, thank you.